Good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m. on Monday, December 2nd, 2024. I'll call this special town meeting to order. My name is Jim Salvi, 74 West Acton Road. I'm the town moderator. So in what I hope is a good omen for tonight, when I approached the podium, I found this. One jigsaw puzzle piece, meaning that tonight's town meeting is the missing piece of the puzzle. That what you are doing here tonight will complete the town's picture. And all the more reason that I just want to thank all of you for showing up tonight on a very cold night with a very short warrant. And I especially want to thank those of you who are not being paid to be here or who do not have an office requiring you to be here. You are truly the backbone of town meeting, and you are who we count on to get the town's business done. Please give yourselves a round of applause. I have some very abbreviated remarks since I think this crowd probably knows the rules of the game. I want to remind you that each speaker has 2 minutes in which to make their comment or make a motion, and then one 1-minute follow-up after they receive a reply. We'll be voting tonight. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah. Okay. We'll be voting tonight only with the cards, no clickers. I think this crowd knows how to handle the cards. There will be several 2/3 threshold votes tonight. I will still be making the call about whether those votes pass or not. But I want to remind you that 7 voters standing can question the moderator's call. If you think my call is incorrect, please don't hesitate to challenge it. I will be entertaining motions to call the question, but only from the microphone. It's a motion like anything else, so unfortunately, if there's a line, you'll have to wait your turn. Please put any amendments to motions in writing. It helps me figure out not only what you're trying to do, but where you're trying to do it. If right now you are thinking about an amendment, this is the time to put it in writing. You don't have to make the motion to amend later on. If you don't want to, you can change your mind. But now would be the time to put it in writing, and if you do, please give it to Lisa Lavina, the deputy moderator. And the forms are with the tellers, I believe. Let me briefly introduce the folks who are up here with me. As we just saw, Lisa Lavina, the deputy moderator. Because of recent charter changes, there's no need to vote on to ratify Lisa as deputy moderator. Town clerk Linda Hathaway, assistant town clerk Deb Seif is around here somewhere in the back, and Robin Stein, town council. At the table in front of me is the select board, J.T. Toole, chair, Megan Birch McMichael, Hector Constanzos, Courtney Freisha, Ingeborg Hegeman Clark, and of course the town administrator, Denise Demkoski. You'll also be hearing recommendations from the finance committee. They are seated in the audience. Please raise your hand when I call your name. Brian Picciuto, chair. Tom Farnsworth, Kevin Gross, Dan Peterson, Angela Zhang, and Jeff Kimmelman, associate. You see on the slide that's before you right now the names of some non-residents who we expect to be addressing town meeting tonight. They're all town employees. Non-residents can address town meeting only with the permission of town meeting. So do I hear a motion to allow these individuals to address town meeting? I think I heard a so moved. And I hear a second. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by holding up the cards. Thank you. And those opposed. Thank you. That motion passes unanimously. I want to thank all those who helped pull together this meeting, including the town administrator and her office, the town clerk's office, the IT department, and Stow TV. And with that, we are ready for our first motion, Mr. Toole.
Mr. Moderator, I move the reading of the warrant and return of the constable thereon be waived, but made a part of the record of this meeting, and that the moderator be permitted to refer to each article by subject matter instead of reading each article in its entirety.
This is a typical form motion that we do at the beginning of every town meeting. It waives traditional requirements that the entire warrant be read out loud by the moderator. And I must note that if ever this motion does not pass, there will be a great time for the deputy moderator to gain some valuable experience. All those in favor, please signify by... I did not get a second, I guess. Sorry. Is there a second, Ms. Clark? Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, or by holding cards. Thank you. You know the routine better than I do. And those opposed? That passes unanimously. That brings us to Article 1, PFAS remediation expenses. Do I have a motion, Mr. Costanzos?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 1, PFAS remediation expenses, as printed in the warrant, and as funding therefore borrow the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of paying a licensed site professional to provide environmental due diligence, Massachusetts contingency plan, and other LSP-related services necessary to address the release of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, that has been detected in several public and private water supply and private supply wells in Stow, including any relevant professional and administrative support services and costs associated with remediating PFAS in the identified public and private wells within the town of Stow's contamination, and that to meet said appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is authorized to borrow the full amount of such appropriation under General Laws Chapter 44 or any other general or special law or other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore.
Thank you. A motion's been made and seconded under Article 1. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in your warrant. Ms. Demkowski, do you want to give a word or two of explanation?
Certainly. So this is the continuation of efforts for the PFAS remediation for the former fire station contamination. Previously, through 3 town meeting articles and an ARPA allocation made by the select board, we have already appropriated $1.2 million for this remediation. The cost of remediation in the next fiscal year is about $450,000, but we are still using the last appropriation that was made in 2023, so this $300,000 should carry us through fiscal 25. This includes adding about 25 new treatment systems on homes that are in the contamination zone, 60 canister replacements for those that have already had remediation systems put in place, and continued bottled water for those that have not had their treatment system, and all of the requirements that we need to meet for the DEP.
Thank you, Ms. Demkowski. Is there any debate? We only have one microphone tonight. It's in the center here at the front. Any debate?
All right,
Front microphone. Go ahead.
Alan Fierce, 284 Red Acre Road. I think I've spoken a couple times before at town meetings regarding this issue. I'm the former executive director of the LSP board for the state of Massachusetts, so I'm kind of familiar with the whole 21E process. But I talk to a lot of people around town and they don't understand it at all. And I'm hoping that at some point we can get a more fulsome report from the town of Stow about this project, which is costing us, as we've just heard, millions of dollars. And it's just, we're not near the end yet. And that is something people also don't understand. So I appreciate the short report. No one wants to hear that tonight, but at some point in the future, maybe we can set aside some time for the town manager and the LSP to be here so that people could come and ask questions about how long this is going to take. What's a realistic estimate on the full cost? It's going to be significant. And, you know, the stage we're at right now is called an immediate response action. There are still not yet plans in place for what the final remediation will be. And people need to know about it. So I hope that can happen in the future.
Thank you. On a personal note, nice to see you up and about, Mr. Pierce. Next speaker.
Bob Collings, 137 Barton Road. I've done a fair amount of research into this because it's curious. And some of the things I find bear directly on our decision tonight. To start with, there's a national study, PANS, that says that 98% of all Americans already have PFAS in their blood. Further, there are 9,000 to 15,000 PFAS compounds. Nobody really knows for sure. And we're exposed to PFAS in our workplace, the food we eat, food packaging, household products, personal care products, and the air we breathe. The foods, if you really want to get rid of PFAS, all you have to do is cut out tea, coffee, pork, candy, bottled water, butter, pizza, processed meats, and others. So the EPA $10 billion, 13,000 employees, still come to the conclusion that more research is needed to fully understand the sources and the variants, if and how they affect health concerns. It's a general consensus that the greatest threat is in the food we eat.
30 seconds, sir.
So individual actions, if you want to, cut out the foods. But I'd raise the question, why should we spend $300,000 to do what? We already have $62 million coming at us from the Neshoba, plus another $4 or $5 million perhaps on the dam project. Enough is enough. Vote no. Thank you.
Would the town administrator like to respond to either or both of the previous comments?
Yes. I don't disagree, Bob. Unfortunately, we are under regulations from the DEP, so until the federal government and the state government change their requirements, we are obligated to comply. Any delay in funding would likely result in enforcement action and noncompliance penalties by DEP.
Front microphone.
Anker Bergson, 8 Middlemost Way. I'm also the treasurer of the Juniper Hill Water Company. My concern is that PFAS contamination is much more widespread than that from just the fire station. In the Juniper Hill Water Company water service that provides for 72 homes in the Juniper Hill development, we are still under the action level for PFAS, but if DEP follows through with raising or lowering the action level, we will fall above the action level and therefore have to deal with the PFAS contamination in our water. My concern is we do not know where that PFAS comes from, whether it's from the town or from some other source. And I would like to see this passed, but I would like the scope to be widened beyond just the fire station contamination, because I believe that a lot of homes in the area have contaminated water, and we are not aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further debate?
Bill Duggan, I live at 22 Wedgwood Road.
Sir, into the microphone. Nobody heard that.
Sorry about that. This is Bill Duggan. I live at 22 Wedgwood Road. We're going to spend another $300,000 basically do a study on PFAS. How much money have we already borrowed for this?
Madam Town Administrator.
So as I mentioned in the opening, we've already appropriated $1.2 million between borrowing and ARPA funds. And this is not for a study. This is for putting treatment centers in folks' homes.
Out of that $1.2 million, how much money is left out of that?
We have about $200,000 left of that that initial appropriation.
So now we're going to
Thank
borrow
you,
another.
sir. That was your one follow-up.
Okay, sorry.
Trish Crawford, 34 Harvard Road. I do
A
have
little
a
closer to the microphone.
Trish Crawford, 34 Harvard Road. I just have a follow-on question to what some other people have asked. When are we going to hear about there are other things like the Stow, the Fire Academy, and I think Wedgewood Pines? Are they also going to be paying into this at some point down the road?
Ms. Demkowski.
So we have a number of different contamination sites in town. It is the responsibility of the DEP to trace where those contaminations come from. The DEP is responsible for remediating their own site and paying for treatments of those contaminated homes. Same thing with anything from the Gleasondale Mill. There is a contamination off of Harvard Road. I think the DEP is narrowed in on Wedgewood Pines, but I don't believe they've assigned full responsibility yet. There was a contamination at the former Bose site. So the way it works is DEP does the investigation, traces the compounds back to what they determine to be the responsible entity, and then they are responsible for paying all the costs and remediation. So as far as expanding the scope, taxpayers would be paying for something that perhaps another entity would be responsible for paying for. If the DEP cannot determine a responsible entity, they will pay the remediation costs until they actually can determine where it's coming from.
So it'll still come from taxpayers, just in a different form. Yeah.
So I think that was your one follow-up. Thank you.
Gay Gibson McDonald, 387 Gleasondale Road. I would like to echo what a former speaker, Alan Pierce, said. I would be very grateful to know more of the details about how this is going to continue, what is planned, what are the expected costs, and to bring somebody in to address town meeting and explain it all from the state. Thank
Ms.
you.
Demkowski.
So we could certainly provide the reports that are due twice a year are hundreds of pages long that outline the remediation efforts. As Mr. Fierce articulated, we don't know yet what DEP is going to require us to do to actually remediate the site itself. And to be honest with you, with the EPA lowering the thresholds, potentially lowering the threshold, it's such a fluid process. One day we're told X, the next day we're told Y. So I think DEP is still going through the motions trying to figure out how they're going to handle this. This is going to impact 351 communities in the Commonwealth. And I think they are in a situation that they don't have the funding to deal with all 351 communities, and they don't know where the money is going to come from because we are talking billions of dollars to remediate this. So we certainly can have an LSP. My opinion is I don't believe town meeting would be the place for that. We could certainly have a select board discussion with our LSP to talk about it. The DEP came in 2 years ago and did a presentation about the PFAS in Stow. You can find that PowerPoint on our website, but we could certainly have the LSP explain where, what's happened to date and what the next year or two look like.
Hold on, Mr. Fierce. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak on this article? There's a gentleman behind you.
Hi, Ben Beckfold, 104 Taylor. I just wanted to ask, what happens if we don't? You said there were enforcement actions. It seems like we have a choice to do this, but really we don't have a choice to do this. So what happens if we don't?
Ms. Demkowski.
So if it does not pass tonight, it will come back in the spring in the annual town meeting because we are required to remediate. So the 25 households that are due new POET systems, which are pointer entry treatment systems, would not get them. The 60 households that are due to have their dual canisters replaced would not be replaced because we would not have the funding to do so. So it would be the residents that are affected by the contamination that would not get the services they need.
Any other new speakers? Yes.
Maureen Crawford, 34 Harvard Road. My question is the services being provided to these 25 households because they were contaminated by a town property, and therefore that's why they're not required to provide these remediations themselves, where any other household within Stow who has PFAS in their water is required to do it themselves? Why should the taxpayers be picking this up?
Ms. Demkowski.
Because the town doesn't generate revenue other than from the taxpayers. So yes, it is from the former fire station contamination. If an individual household tests positive, it's up to them if they want to treat it or not, or if they're through a known entity from another responsible party. It's more than 25 households. It's about 140 households. It's 25 that are due to be remediated this upcoming cycle.
Okay, but we're still responsible because the contamination came from a Stow property?
Correct.
Greg Off, excuse me, 1 Point Way. I'm one of those households that has a POET system. I'm not happy my taxes are potentially going up. I'm not happy that other folks' taxes are going up, but live about a third of a mile from the fire station. Our water was contaminated due to that. So I need a POET system to protect my family so that we can have safe drinking water. It's extremely expensive. It's a large carbon system. Hopefully there'll be a longer term solution someday, but the families that have these systems now are relying on them to keep their families safe at this point. So, thank you.
I don't think it's yet your time, Mr. Fierce.
Debbie Woods, 453 Great Road. What I've heard is we still have $200,000 in the bucket to spend. So of that $200,000, the numbers you talked about, the number of households, the 23 and the whatever, how many of those will be satisfied with that 200K?
So it's not exact, well, it's 450,000 is needed for next fiscal year. I don't have the exact breakdown because it's broken down amongst a number of different things. The 25 households comes to 130,000 just to put the POET systems in.
But if we need 400K and we have 200K, you could say that roughly half would still be taken care of if no more funding was appropriated. Roughly.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Fierce.
My name's Jonathan Massia. I live at 153 Harvard Road in Stow. I appreciate what the town's doing and taking responsibility for their actions, and I support the article because of the contamination that was caused by the old fire station.
A little closer to the mic, sir. You're tall.
Sorry. Is that better? Do you need me to repeat, or?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
bend down a little bit.
All right. I've been fighting to ensure that our neighborhood's wells are able to have clean and safe drinking water in my neighborhood for a number of years, as well as safe streets. I hope that by leading the town by their example, it will inspire others who have been held liable by the state to take responsibility for the contaminations they've caused in neighborhood wells. I'm hoping that the town's put in place adequate and significant measures with the new building projects that may be going on and businesses that are existing in town to ensure that people have safe, clean drinking water that is free from PFAS, and to ensure that other homeowners' wells, as well as surrounding wetlands, are safe and free from contamination. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Fierce, it is finally your time.
I just want to say two things. One, I do support the article. So, but as a small measure of hope here, I want to point out that there was a bill filed in the legislature this year by our own Kate Hogan, a major bill, a PFAS bill that was quite comprehensive. One of the elements in it would have been funding assistance particularly for municipalities. There's also school systems and other public entities that could benefit from this. It did not pass. And so for those of us who are thinking about our bill going up again and again and again as the years go by, I think first thing we ought to do is talk to Kate Hogan. If you know her, talk to her, tell her we've got to get that bill passed. This really is a much larger problem than just Stow's. It's a statewide problem, and there needs to be statewide funding that goes into solving this problem. But it's going to take some effort to get that bill passed because it's going to be costly.
Thank you. And seeing...
One last question.
Yep.
Thank you. Trish Carp, 34 Harvard Road. So I have a question for the chair, because you and I have discussed this before. Like about 18 months ago, we talked about this, and you said you'd been to a program where there was a program that could be a model for, I think, for the state or maybe the country, and then we talked about it again a couple of months ago. I don't know what that program is, but I'm wondering when we'll hear about it. Because I think the last time we talked, you said that would become before a select board meeting.
Actually, what I was referring to is that there's a private group that's been looking into the issues, and it was concerning around the Lake Boone area, and with the fire academy. And that, as that has progressed and the work that's been done on it, this is not an easy or a quick solution, but there has been progress. And as this moves forward, there is discussion that there may be a private not-for-profit entity developed once there's enough information, which could then be used as a pilot for others.
Do we have a timeline?
I honestly can't give a timeline.
Thank you.
And seeing no further debate, we will go to a vote on the main motion under Article 1. This requires a 2/3 majority because it involves bonding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. And those opposed? Thank you. Clearly passes by more than 2/3. Article 2, departmental transfers. Do I have a motion, Ms. Hegeman?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 2, departmental transfers as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. I have a motion made and seconded under Article 2. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in the warrant. And Ms. Demkowski, would you like to give a brief explanation?
Certainly. So these are interdepartmental transfers for fiscal 25. It's budget neutral. As you can see, we're sort of shuffling money based on some needs that have come up. The police department, in the spring, if you'll recall, when we were talking about the budget, we did not have all the union contracts finalized, so we overestimated for police wages. Their contract came in at a lower rate, so there's extra money in the wages line. The chief would like to make some updates in the department, including adding a second mental health clinician. In the fire department, we have been short-staffed since the former fire chief retired in July. We are down a full-time firefighter as well, so we have been backfilling with a number of overtime opportunities for the full-timers and the per diems. And the highway department, we hired the secretary in the after town meeting in the spring at just a higher rate than what we had budgeted for. Again, it's budget neutral. We're just moving money from one line item to another within the fiscal 25 budget.
Thank you. Is there any debate? Seeing none, we will go to a vote on the main motion under Article 2. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. And all those opposed? Thank you. I'll call that unanimous. Before we get to Article 3, one word of explanation. This is a structured conversation. It's not like a normal casual conversation. It's question, answer, question, answer. If you use your second question to restate what the town administrator or other official says, I'm going to call that your follow-up. So just be careful of that kind of thing. Article 3, conveyance of an easement for public water supply at First Parish Unitarian Church. Do I have a motion, Ms. Birch-McMichael?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 3, conveyance of an easement for public water supply at First Parish Unitarian Church as printed in the warrant, and convey an easement on a portion of that property located at 323 Great Road, being Assessor's Particle 00U 10-0000026, described in a deed recorded with the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds in Book 63833, page 279, said easement being approximately 1,637 square feet and shown on a sketch plan filed with the town clerk for purposes of public water supply and protection, and for access and egress thereto for the benefit of the property being Assessor's Parcel 00U-10-0034-4, believed to be owned by First Parish Unitarian Church, and authorize the Select Board to convey said easement on such terms and conditions and for such consideration as the select board deems appropriate, which may be nominal consideration, and to execute such documents as may be necessary to carry out the purpose of this article.
Thank you. I have a motion made and seconded under Article 3. I do like how we're testing the Select Board's ability to pronounce difficult things tonight. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in the warrant. And Ms. Demkowski, would you like to give a brief explanation?
Certainly. We have been working, if you'll recall, from spring 2022 town meeting, excuse me, for putting in a separate public water supply well at the church. The capacity in the town building water supply is no longer adequate. This would then allow the select board to grant an easement on the property located at Town Center Park, which was identified as a future water area, to grant them well protection from the well zone. So this is just authorizing the select board to grant an easement for a public water supply for First Parish Church.
Thank you. Is there any debate? Seeing none, we will go to a vote on the main motion under Article 3. This requires a simple majority. It's a conveyance of an interest in land. All of us in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. And those against? Opposed? I will call that unanimous. Article 4, transfer of custody and control of open space parcels. Mr. Toole, do you have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that town approve Article 4, transfer of custody and control of open space parcels as printed in the warrant, to transfer the care, custody, and control of the following parcels of town-owned land from the Select Board to the Conservation Commission pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C. Parcel 1, Crescent Farm Subdivision Open Space, 13.167 acres off Deerfield Lane, as shown on the Town of Stow Assessor's maps as map U-11, parcel 039C-1. Parcel 2, Fairway Drive Subdivision Open Space, 13.71 acres off Edson Street, as shown on the Town of Stow Assessor's maps as map R-11, parcel 11B. Parcel 3, Zero Gates Lane, 0.93 acres off Gates Lane, as shown on the Town of Stow Assessor's maps as map R-10, parcel 33. And parcel 4, Zero Militia Circle, Red Acre Estates, open space, 8.11 acres off Militia Circle, as shown on Town of Stow Assessor's maps as map R-30, parcel 82.
Did I hear a second? Thank you. I have a motion made and seconded under Article 4. Before we go further, I should note, Council has advised that this will require a 2/3 majority. I believe your warrant says a simple majority. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in your warrant. And on this one, we have a presentation, I think, by Ms. Farah.
It's for very short people. So good evening and thank you. I'm Kathy Spera, 74 West Acton Road, and Conservation Director for the Town of Stow. Tonight we are asking you to transfer 4 parcels from the custody and control of the Select Board to the custody and control of the Conservation Commission. This will give them permanent legal status as open space under Massachusetts law. All 4 of these parcels are open space for subdivisions that were designated by the Planning Board, or they are wetland, or both. As a result, all of them are undevelopable. All have been shown for a very long time on the town's open space and recreation map as open space. However, a recent review of all of our holdings as part of our open space and recreation plan revealed that technically these 4 parcels are actually under the custody of the Select Board. So let me just briefly review the 4 parcels that we're talking about. And can I advance this? Maybe. Okay. So parcel 1 is open space for the Deerfield Lane or Crescent Farm subdivision. The parcel contains an existing trail that connects Stow Town Forest to the Red Acre Woodlands and then to Captain Sargent and beyond. The land and trails are currently managed by the Conservation Commission, and the land was anticipated to be deeded to the Conservation Commission as part of the subdivision approval process. However, the owner passed before that could happen. The land was taken by the town for back taxes, and that's how it ended up in the control of the select board. In 2005, a permanent restriction, it was taken in 2005, and there is a permanent restriction on the parcel that limits the uses of the land to conservation and open space. Parcel 2 is open space for the Fairway Drive subdivision off Edson Road. The land was deeded to the town and accepted by town meeting in 2012. With a restriction on the use of the land preventing any development. However, typical statutory language that's included in deeds, transferring it to the Conservation Commission, was not included in the deed, so the land is technically in control of the select board. The land abuts now Stow Acres land that is managed by the Conservation Commission, and except for a very small sliver on the edge of the parcel, is all wetland. Parcel 3 is a very small parcel of land on Gates Lane that is all wetland. The select board voted a temporary transfer of the land to the Conservation Commission way back in 2001, and your vote tonight would make that permanent. And then finally, parcel 4 is open space for the Red Acre Estates subdivision off Militia Circle, tucked up against the Maynard line. In 1989, town meeting voted to accept this land, but the transfer was never consummated, and the land was placed in tax title. In 2003, the select board voted to make a temporary transfer of land to the Conservation Commission. So again, your vote tonight would make that transfer permanent. The Conservation Commission is supportive of these transfers, as they would place land that we are currently managing into our custody and control and ensure that the land is fully protected under state law. The land is already owned by the town and is not buildable, so we ask for your support tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any debate?
Mr. Moderator, Tom Ryan, 453 Great Road. One of the things that the select board and town administration had done years ago was any land that was going to be transferred to the Conservation Commission made sure that it was allowable to put wells on there for any future development. And I'd like to know if this land has been evaluated for that, and if not, why not?
Ms. Farah?
So anticipating your question, Tom, I turned to GIS this week and I looked in depth at all of the parcels. So just quickly, parcel 1 does have a conservation restriction on it. Years ago, we went to the legislature to try to seek approval for a well. And the legislature actually, House Counsel rejected the request for an amendment to the use of the parcel. Parcel 2, again, just has a little tiny bit of upland tucked up against the property line, so I don't think it would support a zone 1 for a well. Parcel 3, again, all wetlands, no real ability to get in and put a well, it's too small. And then parcel 4, actually, oops, I just had it up here, does not have any access to it. And if you see right on the opposite side of Red Acre Road is Red Acre Woodlands. Just to the north of that is the recently purchased Cornelius property, which does have provisions for a well. We've been looking and doing a study of that parcel. It's a whole lot more accessible to Red Acre Road in terms of trying to get, piping and water supply out of that parcel. So I don't know actually whether the parcel tucked up against the Maynard line could support a well, but I suspect we have far better options.
One thing is there is access there from Militia Circle. There's a 40-foot wide easement that goes up into that.
There is, but it's a very long way around to get to Stow.
Yep, no, I'm just
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. That was your one follow-up.
That was basically a
That was your
correction.
follow-up, Mr. Ryder. Thank you. Ms. Farrer, speak closer to the microphone. It does come out of that thing.
Sure.
Front microphone.
Ames Coney at 371 Sudbury Road. I'm curious about the distinction and the decision process between what land goes to the Conservation Commission and what goes to the Recreation Commission. I happen to be a butter of recreation land, and we feel like we're under threat of it being turned into lighted soccer fields any minute, whereas conservation land would not be. But is there any other logic for why one is used and not the other?
Ms. Farrer.
Generally, what happens is when town meeting or the town votes to accept a parcel, as part of that acceptance, they will specify the allowable uses. If land is going to be in the control of the Conservation Commission, there is language that's put in the deed that says transfer to the town of Stow to be placed under the custody and control of the Conservation Commission, and then there's a statutory reference. The same thing would happen if a parcel was being acquired for recreation purposes. There's a different statute that's referenced, and it's placed under the control of the Recreation Commission. If there's no entity specified, then it just goes to the town of Stow and is controlled by the select board. And so the selectmen make the rules and then determine how the property can be used. Generally, we would only manage land that we control. So when homeowners call and say, you know, there's a hazard tree or somebody's dumping, or, you know, we'll go out and address that. And that's one of the reasons why we think it makes sense to have the Conservation Commission have these parcels, is something that we're already doing with them, versus the select board doesn't have a lot of ability to directly manage land.
So if something is classified as conservation land, it's pretty much sacrosanct. If it's classified as Recreation Commission land, can it be transferred to conservation?
I think there is a legal process that you have to go through to do that. I think town meeting would have to vote to do that. And beyond that, I would have to turn to council.
Is there any further debate? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote on the main motion under Article 4. Again, this requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. And those opposed? I will call that unanimous.
Thank you.
Article 5, amend the zoning bylaw, section 6.3, signs. Ms. Freisha.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 5, amending zoning bylaw, section 6.3, signs, as presented in the warrant.
I have a motion made and seconded under Article 5. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in the warrant. I want to ask the chair of the Planning Board if they have held the requisite hearing and the result thereof.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, the Planning Board held a hearing and the Planning Board recommends approval of this article.
Name and address, Ms. Clark.
39 Bradley Lane.
Lori Clark, for the record. Thank you, Ms. Clark. And Ms. Demkowski, any brief explanation of this?
This is just to change the name of Superintendent of Streets to Director of Public Works in accordance with the charter changes that were voted last year.
Thank you. Any debate? Any debate? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote because it's amending the zoning bylaw. So all those in favor, we're now voting on the main motion under Article 5. All those in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. And those opposed? And I will call that unanimous. Vote. I'll call it unanimous. Thank you. Article 6, amend zoning bylaw, accessory apartments. Do I have a motion, Ms. Hegeman?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 6, amend zoning bylaw, accessory apartments, as printed in the warrant, except that on Section D, under the compact business column, the reference to Note 6 is removed and a reference to Note 17 is added.
Second. I have a motion made and seconded under Article 6. First, you may have noticed that there is a difference There's some extra language at the bottom of that motion that makes it vary from the language that is in your warrant. I want to call your attention to that. If you're interested, it's on page 9, the top table under D. The planning board is proposing in this motion a change in the 5th column from the left, the column headed compact business. They are proposing to take out the footnote 6, that's in bold, and they are proposing to add in the footnote 17 in bold. Footnote 17, I believe, essentially says that it is subject to site plan approval. I found that this is within scope because the text of the amendments in section F requires site plan approval. So this is really just conforming the table to the text. I want to ask the chair of the planning board again whether they held a requisite hearing and what the result thereof was.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, the planning board held a hearing and the planning board voted to recommend approval of this article as amended.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. And I believe we have a brief presentation from Mr. Slagle. I am so sorry. Mr. Slagle, you can make your way up here. The Finance Committee has a recommendation.
Brian Patuto, 63 Crescent Street, the Chair of your Finance Committee. The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Patuto. And Mr. Slagle, whenever you are ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Slagle. I'm the Land Use Planner and GIS Administrator, and I will take you through Article 6, which is amending the accessory apartment bylaw within the zoning bylaw. So I'd like to start out by just giving a quick few examples of what accessory apartments are. You may have heard of them referred to accessory dwelling units, in-law suites, or something like that. And these are small dwelling units that are attached to or detached from a single family house. So each of these units will have a separate space for sleeping, for preparation of food, which would be a kitchen, and sanitary facilities such as a bathroom. So all of those different items are contained within a small unit that is either attached to or detached from a single family house. These are found throughout the United States, across Massachusetts, and even here in Stow. And generally, the audience or the residents of those units can be caretakers, your in-laws, young adults, and it can also help create a multi-generational property where you have different generations living in close proximity to one another. So there have been some changes in Massachusetts general law that we are working to comply with. And this is under the Affordable Homes Act, which was passed earlier this year. So part of our amendments, we have 5 different processes that we have to go through. The first is adjusting the size of the accessory apartments that we allow here in Stow. Currently, we allow accessory apartments that are about 700 square feet, but the state law says that we either have to have them be 900 square feet or 1/2 of the overall footprint of the single-family dwelling. The second requirement that we have is that we can no longer have occupancy requirements, so this allows either this primary dwelling or the accessory dwelling to be rented out to whoever. The permit process has changed, so instead of using a special permit, you now have it by right, which is administrative approval by the building commissioner. If there are a detached dwelling that you're proposing, it would have to have site plan approval by the planning board. The fourth change that we're making is to change the parking requirements. Under state law, we can only require 1 parking spot. So this is a parking minimum, so you can have more than 1 spot, but we can't require more than 1 per accessory apartment. And the 5th part that we're changing is some of the requirements that property owners would need to have in order to get an accessory apartment. Most of these are just simple rewrites of what's currently within the accessory apartment bylaw that we have, such as conformance with the dimensional requirements, and that would be the height of buildings, the setback from property lines. This limits each property owner to one accessory apartment per lot. It must remain in single ownership. You must comply with Title V, and there are some small building and site design requirements that property owners must have in order to get the permit to build it. We have also recodified the bylaw just to make it a little bit easier for people to understand and kind of take you through step by step on what you need to do. And here are just a few reminders about this whole process. For those of you who are new to zoning, zoning is just about the land use, and it is the primary way that we regulate land, but there are other uses that do come into effect, such as Title V for septic and wells, and the Wetlands Protection Act. This proposed bylaw does not waive any of those requirements. They still apply. We're making the process simpler for property owners, but we're not making it necessarily any less strict. Accessory apartments can be found throughout Stow, and they provide a very necessary, safe, and stable form of housing for a lot of our community members. So keeping this bylaw simple and achievable for other residents will help advance those goals. And the current bylaw that we have will become ineffective after February 2025. So by doing this now, we can have a bylaw that we can still enforce after February. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slagle. Is there any debate? And before we begin debate, I just want to, you can stand at the microphone, feel free. I just want to note, guidance from the state right now tells us that the threshold that we'll be using tonight is a majority. Even though this is amending a zoning bylaw, this is special, and the guidance tells us that we'll be using simple majority. However, council has pointed out that that guidance is ongoing and developing, and therefore she's asked me when we take a vote to make a call under both thresholds, majority and 2/3. So when we have a vote, you'll hear something rather unusual, and that's why. But the threshold that we'll be using tonight to determine whether or not it passed is a simple majority. Sorry to interrupt. Please proceed.
Maureen Crawford, 34 Harvard Road. My question is, in this presentation, it mentions Title V. Would tiny houses or self-sustaining, I can't talk this evening, qualify as this because it gets shorter?
The microphone comes out, if that helps.
No. So would a tiny house or a self-sustaining, which has its own solar powder or compost toilet or its own water generating, not have to qualify for using Title V and all of those other requirements under this?
Mr. Slagle, can you answer that?
So I'm not 100% familiar with Title V. That would be under the Board of Health. I would assume that you would have to have the burden of proving that your system can meet those requirements if you choose to have an alternative system compared to a typical well and septic system.
So my follow-up question would be, does this bylaw mandate that is that part of the bylaw that we're voting on, that it includes Title V?
Mr. Slagle, do you understand the question?
Are you asking if Title V still applies to these units entirely?
Would you like to pass the ball to the town administrator? I think she's...
Yes.
So I was just going to reiterate what he said. So yes, Title V would still apply to these units. It would be up to whomever is building them or developing it to take it to the Board of Health and see if there's a waiver or some other requirements if it's a self-sustaining system. But Title V will apply.
Okay.
Any further debate? Seeing none, we will go directly to a vote. The vote is on the main motion under Article 6. As I said, we'll be using a majority, though I'll be making a call under both thresholds. All those in favor, please signify by holding up your cards. Thank you. And those opposed? I will call that unanimous, therefore satisfying the majority and the 2/3 thresholds. Article 7, acceptance of Great Road at Hudson Road pedestrian improvement easements. Do I have a motion, Mr. Constanzos?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town approve Article 7, acceptance of Great Road at Hudson Road pedestrian improvement easements, as printed in the warrant to A, authorize the Select Board to acquire by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise, permanent and/or temporary easements for public way purposes, including without limitation for the construction, alteration, installation, maintenance, improvement, repair, replacement, and/or relocation of rights-of-way, sidewalks, walkways, traffic signalization, drainage, utilities, driveways, guardrails, slopes, grading, rounding, landscaping, and other appurtenances and/or facilities to enable the town to undertake the Great Road at Hudson Road Improvement Project and for any and all purposes incidental or related thereto, in, on, and under certain parcels of land and land adjacent to and within 200 feet of said parcels located on or near Great Road at Hudson Road, and shown more particularly on a plan entitled Easement Plan of Land Great Road at Hudson Road, Stow, Massachusetts, dated July 25th, 2023, prepared by Green International Affiliates Incorporated, said plan on file with the town clerk, as said plan may be amended, and further, B, authorize the Select Board to enter into all agreements and take any and all actions as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the foregoing purposes.
I have a motion made and seconded under Article 7. Your Finance Committee recommendation is in the warrant, and Ms. Ortez has a brief presentation. Valerie?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Valerie Ortiz. I'm the Planning Director. Congratulations for making it to the last article of the night. So this is the acceptance of pedestrian improvement easements for the Hudson Road, Great Road intersection signalization project. So the project includes the installation of a traffic signal, milling and paving, and pedestrian improvements. The scope of the project includes about 800 square feet of Great Road and about 400 feet on Hudson Road. I'm controlling this. Okay. So considerable work has gone into this project so far, beginning in 2016 with the intersection study, which reported that the intersection meets 3 warrants for signalization of the intersection. Planning had a road safety audit completed in 2022, which reviewed traffic counts, speeds, and crashes, and included additional refreshed recommendations from the 2016 report for the design of the intersection. From there, using ARPA funds, we began working with engineers at Green International on concept plans, presented 3 alternative designs to the Select Board in early 2023, and are now at the 100% design phase. In October, planning was awarded a $1.1 million grant from the MassWorks Infrastructure Program to cover the cost of construction of these improvements. So to review the need of this project, we know that there are poor traffic operations at this intersection. Again, there are 3 signal warrants that are met. There are new housing developments that are planned in proximity to this intersection, including the residences at Stow Acres off of Randall Road and the cottages at Wandering Pond off of Hudson Road. There's also a new for-profit school, the Masters Academy, which is planned for Great Road. And the traffic studies and the 100% design phase for this project take these developments into consideration. We've also documented the substandard pedestrian facilities and vehicle access management in the intersection. The sidewalk on Hudson Road stops about 150 feet from the intersection. The sidewalks are narrow, crosswalks are faded, and there are no ADA compliant tactile warning pads at crosswalks or at driveways in the intersection. So the design includes a signalized intersection, a lead green phase for vehicles who are looking to turn left onto Hudson Road from Great Road, ADA compliant traffic and pedestrian signal equipment, the installation of sidewalks along the south side of Great Road and either side of Hudson Road, The design also maintains existing access points to businesses, and it limits impacts to abutting properties. So the request tonight is to authorize the Select Board to acquire 5 temporary easements and 3 permanent easements, which impact a total of 5 property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortez. And do we have any debate?
Maureen Crawford, 34 Harvard Road. I am around the corner from this lovely new signal that's going to be going in. My question is, will there be pressure pads for the signals and for lower volume so we don't get stuck at the light when wasting gas? And will they be coordinated with the other signals, especially with Masters Academy coming in, and there will be students there of driving age, because it takes me so long to try and take a left-hand turn out of Harvard Road onto Great Road that I have gotten to the point where I am pulling my nose out to cut off one side of the traffic so I can actually get out of my street.
Ms. Ortez?
So the signal will be timed, so it will have the technology within the mastheads to optimize the signal phases. I don't believe that there will be the pads underneath the road that allow you to trigger the light. But our consultants have taken a look at signal timing optimization with the other traffic signal that's in existence at the Hudson Road or the Harvest Drive intersection. And so they've determined that, in fact, even without optimization between those 2 signals, the Hudson Road Great Road intersection is projected to have a better level of service than it would with optimization. However, we have requested that the optimization technology be put into the masthead so that in the future, as the town adapts to the additional traffic from the housing developments and from Masters Academy, we could commission a study in the future to see about optimizing the 2 signals if there is an issue.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, Stow does not want to be advanced in our technology, and we want to spend more money down the road rather than try and take on the technology that Bolton has for their signals coming off of 495, where those have pressure pads, because as soon as a car pulls up to it and there's no traffic coming in the direction, the light turns green. So in other words, we'll just waste gas, and then we'll spend more money down the road. Could it be added? Could it be added to this project? Sorry.
Do you want to reply to that? Was that a question?
My question is, can the pressure pads be added to the project rather than do another survey down the road?
Ms. Ortez?
The project is at the 100% design phase. We have the grant based on the estimate for the project. So in order to complete the project, I would say no, we cannot add it to it. However, an optimization study is not an exorbitant cost.
But it is more money.
Yes.
Next question.
Hi, Ben Beckfold, 104 Taylor. I just had a question about the language. It says to acquire, purchase, gift, or eminent domain, or otherwise, and then it says there's no impact on tax levy. How can you purchase something without the money? I don't understand why that language is in there if it's just a free thing or whatever.
Ms. Ortez?
Yes. So ahead of an acquisition process, the property owners will have the option to provide a waiver. So it may be that there is not a financial compensation for this. But if there is, that would come through Chapter 90 funds. These are the funds that the DPW uses to maintain our roadways. So it's money that is already coming toward the town. So if we need to actually acquire these easements, we would be able to use that funding.
Is there any further debate? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote on the main motion under Article 7. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please signify by holding up your cards. Thank you. Those opposed? That clearly passes by 2/3. Thank you. And we only have one more motion for the night, and I think it is the honor of Ms. Birch McMichael to make it.
Mr. Moderator, I move that this meeting be dissolved.
This is not debatable. All those in favor, please signify by holding up your cards. And those opposed, if there is any, if there are any. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for turning out on this cold night. The meeting is dissolved.